And as you know, I don't bring religion up, or I try to avoid religion and politics. I don't support any political party. I don't support any particular religion, but I will bring up one question. Does God exist? This is a very relevant question, and everyone, I'm sure, has got an opinion on that. There's lots of people out there who say, no, God doesn't exist. We're all just here spinning on a blob, and it's survival of the fittest, and when we die, it's good night Vienna, lights out. There is no afterlife whatsoever. Well, if that's the case, why don't we just go around killing each other, robbing each other, raping people, and just have a wild time and enjoy ourselves, take loads of drugs, and just enjoy ourselves in the short time that we've got here? Why don't we eat each other, you know? I can think of a few reasons why we shouldn't eat each other. I mean, tribal survival, for one. I mean, if we say, yes, it's okay, you can eat him, I don't mind, you might come and eat me tomorrow, and I don't want to be eaten, so we have to put a stop to that. Thanks for all the comments in the previous video, and people have made a lot of very valid comments about gloom and doom in the UK, and we'll come on to prisons later. Now, a lot of people have said that, you know, what's going on with the UK, you know, it was a great country at one time, and it's all gone downhill. Well, the reason it's gone downhill is down, in my opinion, to greed, the want for power. If you look at gangsters, okay, and kings, tell me what the difference is. You've got the Don, he's a ruthless, and he's got loads of henchmen, and he's got his little empire, or big empire, however the case may be. And if you look at gangsters and kings, they're much the same. The king's generally bigger. He's got more men, more henchmen, more weapons, more people to push you around. And that's one of the reasons that they have prisons, is because if you don't like them and you object to things that they do, they can throw you in prison. Or you don't do as they say, they can throw you in prison at your expense, because you're paying for it. They're not paying for it, you are, as the taxpayer. Anyway, as a good example of power and greed, the question often arises, how did the First World War start? Because that seems to be what really put the kibosh on the British Empire, which is not actually anything to boast about, because even at the height of the British Empire, when Edward VII was on the throne, I think the British Empire was as rich as it was ever going to get. There were people still living in slums and walking around without any shoes on and starving, and that was in Britain. I mean, why, when all that money was available, why didn't they put that money into social reform? And the reason for that is because they don't give a shit about you, okay? They want to dominate the world, get really rich, and when they get really rich, they're going to build a fabulous house. And if they get even richer, they'll build an annex onto their fabulous house to make it even bigger and have more servants. You know, that's just the way things work, okay? And then one day, the king was there with his big army, and they all had rifles, and one day, the reason the First World War started, in my opinion, is because of a young chap called Hiram Maxim. Okay, and he invented that. Okay, and for the benefit of those of you who don't know what that is a heavy machine gun, and it was designed and built over 100 years ago. Hello, India.
Hello, I'm getting vapes, vape. So
oh, right,
just
okay.
passing by.
It's no problem. Just feel free to just walk through my studio, it's fine, I don't mind. And this was a machine gun that could chop trees down. And that's how Maxim marketed his machine gun. He said, look, this thing just keeps on firing. You know, you just keep putting bullets to it and it will just keep going. It's even got a water-cooled jacket full of water, so the barrel doesn't get too hot, and it can just continuously fire and fire and fire and fire. And of course the greedy gangsters didn't want to learn about tree surgery, okay? They wanted to conquer the world, and they thought, brilliant, brilliant, that can do the job of 100 men with rifles. And so they bought it. They bought it off young Maxim and said, yes, now we're going to conquer the world. And that's exactly what they did. Armed with these machine guns, they decided to take over the entire world. The only problem was Maxim wasn't stupid, you see, and he'd sold them to the other side as well. And we know what happened next. And you know, people can come up with lots of different assumptions and reasons as to why the First World War happened, and it's all bollocks, okay? Because in my opinion, the reason the First World War happened was because you've got a lot of greedy, horrible people who want more power, and they saw this as a secret weapon and their opportunity to take control of everything and just take over the world. And it all ended in tears, didn't it? Now, I think it's fair to say that the older you get, the more you realise that, you know, a lot of people don't actually know what they're talking about. And you get people that are put in positions of authority and they're just lazy people. They don't give a shit about what they're doing. They just want to get paid at the end of the day, and they just want to make money and think about what they're going to spend it on. They're not actually focused or dedicated to the job that they've got in hand. And people are just so incompetent, and there's nothing worse than having incompetent people in positions of authority, and it can often result in tragedy, really. I posted a film in my community post the other day which I didn't know anything about. I watched it in horror and thought, oh my god. And you can look at it. It's about anti-aircraft guns in the Second World War. You know, they've got timers on them, and they thought, how high are the airplanes? They're, let's say 20,000 feet. Okay, so they know how fast the shell travels and how long it'll take to get to 20,000 feet. So they put a timer on the end, boom, and they fire it up there, and it just explodes, bang, shouting debris everywhere. Because these planes were flying over London, dropping bombs on people. Okay, so they thought, oh, we've got to do something, and it's impossible pretty much to hit a German aeroplane with an artillery shell. So you have to have exploding artillery shells. But the timers they come from Switzerland, okay, because they were all clockwork and Swiss made, and they're expensive piece of kit. Munitions companies make a fortune every time there's a war. They're boosted. Anyway, there was a shortage of these timers coming from Switzerland because there was a war on. So they started making them themselves in the UK and firing these shells, and a lot of them were defective, shall we say. So they went whizzing straight past the German aeroplane up into the sky, slowed down, stopped, and then came all the way back down to the ground, blowing up someone's house and killing a family. And that happened lots and lots of times. Also, when the shells did explode, the flying shrapnel all over the place that rains down from 20,000 feet, and if that hit anybody, that would kill them as well, do a lot of damage to people's property on the ground, and make it even worse if they did actually hit a German aeroplane and blew it up. It came spiralling down in flames and crashed on somebody's house and killed somebody. So, all in all, if you'd have worked out what was actually happening, they'd have been better off just leaving the German planes, because they can't hit anything anyway from that altitude, because it's just so inaccurate bombing at that altitude. That's why they had to do loads of them. But they had to do something, and they got these big artillery shells, big artillery batteries off ships, and put them in the ground in London and had them firing at aeroplanes, and they were just killing people all over the city. It really were. And it was like, it just makes you understand how incompetent people who were supposed to be in charge really are. And when you go back to the First World War and you've got things like this, and you send all your men over the top and they all get mowed down and die, you think, So obviously you don't do that again, do you? You don't make the same mistake twice. Okay, then we get hit with a pandemic. Whoa, pandemic, everybody panics. What do we do? What do we do? Everybody's got to be jabbed. Have we? Okay. So let's not talk about excessive death rates because we'll probably get shadow banned. And we did see a similar thing with the American Patriot missile in Israel, which was defending Tel Aviv against all Saddam Hussein's Scud missiles. The Patriots caused more damage to Tel Aviv than the Scuds ever did. So, again, we're looking at incompetence. Hopefully 20 years later the Patriot missile system has improved somewhat. Would like to think so anyway, wouldn't we? Monopoly. Who's played Monopoly? The Monopoly board. I'm sure we all have as children. And how does a Monopoly work? One person sucks up all the money and everybody else goes broke. Okay, and what's different in real life? You've got greedy, ruthless, power-hungry people who are sucking up all the money. And that means that they're going to be fabulously rich and everyone else is going to be skinned. So in summing it all up, you're being bullshitted by propaganda. This is what it is. You know, you've got to see through these people's disguises and see them for what they really are. You know, they're not in it for you. They're not going to help you or us. Okay, they're only in it for them. And we've got to keep a close eye on this. We've got to keep a close eye on it. We've got to keep them reined in. Otherwise they'll go out of control. We've seen what happens when governments go out of control. We've seen, I think the extreme example of it is when the gangsters got in Nazi Germany, and it was the law. You know, it was quite acceptable for the police to go around arresting Jewish people and throwing them in trains and sending them off to prisons and death camps and things. That was the norm. That was quite the normal thing, which is might be legal, but it's definitely not right, is it? And then we've got British policemen in the Channel Islands. When the Germans took over the Channel Islands, British policemen were going round rounding up Jews. So just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right. And that brings me on to prisons, which I'm going to do next.